We'll give maybe like 2 more minutes for people to join and then we'll start the webinar. All right, we could get started here and then more people might join in as we go. Um, but today's webinar, we're going to talk about disappointments. I'll pull up the little PowerPoint that we're going to look at today. All right, so dealing with disappointments and to put it a little bit more into perspective, how do we overcome setbacks and challenges that we may face, like during our soccer career, whether that be injury, getting cut from the team, losing our spot in the starting lineup. So all these things we're going to look at today and how we can deal with them, how we can manage our emotions when we face these disappointments. So first, I know I started last meeting with this too, but I think it's important that we look at this again, the controllables versus uncontrollables in sports. And I think as we go and look at the different disappointments that we're going to talk about today, it's important to keep these in mind. So first, we're looking at the uncontrollables, which are things that are like are out of our control. We can't, if we think we can control them, they might cause like more anxiety and, more overthinking while we're in the game. So for example, the first one, the opponent, we can't control who our opponent is or how good or how bad they are. Um, our past mistakes, teammates' performances, other people's opinions we can't control, our coaches' decisions we can't control. So if we put too much attention and too much thought into that, then, it starts consuming us. We might be thinking like, oh, like what is my coach thinking right now? I remember like when I was in college even and like I was at practice, like I would always like make a pass or something and be like, oh, like what did my coach think about that pass? I was always trying to figure out like things that I couldn't control, and it ended up having me think like more, and then like I wasn't too focused on the present moment and performing at my best. So, versus the controllables now we'll look at, which is how we can kind of deal with these uncontrollables and put them in our favor. So, for example, attitude and mindset. You can't control your coach's decision, but you control how you act. So how he can think of you. So for example, I had a new coach in college my junior year, and I knew like right off the bat, like I wanted to show him that I was committed to the team. I wanted to put my full effort into the team. So after every single drill, like I was the first one, like picking up all the cones, making sure all the balls were collected. And then at my end of year meeting where he spoke with us, that was one of the things he pointed out. He was like, him and the assistant coach like really admired that I was kind of a leader and like I was, committing to the team by doing those little things like picking up the cones or collecting the balls at the end of the drill. So your attitude and mindset, your energy, all these things you can control, which will make the uncontrollables in your favor. So preparation's another one, responding to adversity, which is basically what we're talking about today, our effort, and then how you treat your teammates are all things that we can control. All right, so now we're going to look at, I like to categorize it with different layers of disappointment. So there's disappointment that happens kind of like instantly when we're in the moment. And these mistakes are things such as like a bad pass or, losing the ball and the other team scores, coach subs you out quickly after that. And these are all things that lower your confidence because obviously when you make a mistake, you start thinking about more mistakes and then you might get out of your rhythm. And so this is disappointment in the moment. And soccer is a very fast-paced game. So you don't really have a lot of time to think about like the mistakes you made or the bad pass you just made. So after these occur, like I was saying, it's typical to feel nervous and fearful, which is normal. obviously everyone makes mistakes and they have a reaction to that mistakes. Um, but today we're gonna like look at how we can manage those reactions in the present moment so that it doesn't lead to future disappointment. So when I mean future disappointments, it could lead to, losing your starting spot for the next couple of games or getting cut from the team at the tryouts the next year because maybe that one mistake that you made in the game changes your whole mindset about yourself. Like, oh, I just let the other team score. Now I'm no, I'm not a good defender anymore. Like, and your confidence ever since that one mistake just gets lower and lower and lower. So that's what we want to avoid. Even the last one I put there, picking up an injury, there's been studies that shown that like when you're super stressed out and you're overthinking, you're not really like as responsive or like as reactive. So that could cause like a misstep or an injury. So even like when you're having these thoughts, it could cause like a physical injury as well, which is pretty interesting. So this, how I said where we want those instant disappointments, we don't want them to, overcome our emotions and then like lead to future disappointments like getting cut or, not wanting to play soccer anymore, anything like that. So this is a technique that I used and that when I went to see like a mental performance coach, like they gave me and it actually like really helped. Because like I was saying before in soccer, you rarely get like a break or stoppage of play. If anything, like maybe you get a throw in and the ball's out of play for like 5 to 10 seconds. But other than halftime, the game is always moving. So this is like a quick like breathing technique that I used in the game, like when I would make a bad pass or I was having a bad game in general. So I broke it down into 5 steps so we can go through each one. So step one is obviously you make the mistake, whatever it is. And then step two is, you have those emotions of feeling frustrated, nervous, scared. Maybe you start to think that your coach is going to take you out or your teammates are looking down on you, which is all normal. Step three, which I put an asterisk next to, is, it's okay to feel and acknowledge these emotions. Because if you're not, it may say you give up a goal for the other team and you're not feeling frustrated, that's kind of like more concerning because you're not really caring about your team or about the outcome of the game. So if you don't care at all, then like you're not really that committed to your team. So you want to feel and like acknowledge these emotions. If you feel frustrated, that's fine. Like acknowledge your emotions and then you can move on from that. So step four explains how you can release these emotions and move on from, okay, like I'm acknowledged, I'm frustrated, I gave up a goal, but then how can I move on that instantly so that in the next play, that thought or that nervousness from the play before doesn't consume us and then lead us to make more and more mistakes. So that technique is a breathing technique as shown. It's 3 seconds in, hold 2 seconds, and then 3 seconds exhale. All right. So the whole thing is only 8 seconds. And you can repeat this like 3 to 4 times. So it'll be like, I don't know, around a minute maybe. And you can do, you don't have to be like standing still, obviously, because you're going to be in the game moving around. So like as you're moving, like, you're doing the 3 seconds in, 2 seconds hold, exhale for 3 seconds. And like I said, while you're moving, maybe the ball's on the other side of the field and you're kind of doing this to relax yourself. And then after you do that, the result of this, your mind will relax and you'll be able to refocus on the present moment. Um, but this obviously is not gonna work like right away. I think, like I spoke about in the very first meeting, there's 3 pillars to every sport. There's the technical, physical, and then the mental. So obviously, like when you're working on the technical stuff, like when you come to train with me and Coach Mike, you have to work on that constantly in order to get like a good first touch, a good shot, a good range of pass. Same thing with this. Like you can't expect to do this one time and then magically like it's gonna work out. You can this will obviously be available, so you can look at this and then, practice this every morning or every night when you wake up. Because, I initially thought when I saw this, I was like, oh, this is easy. Like, I'm going to do it one time and then, like, I'll be able to get over, like, making a mistake in the game, like, right away. But I tried it the first time and, like it didn't work because I just thought like I could pop into the game and boom, it would work. But after that, I realized I needed to go home. I would do it like every night before I go to sleep or every morning, whatever you want. Doesn't have to be night or morning. It could be middle of the day too, whatever your preference is. Um, but I'm just trying to iterate that like you need to go home and practice this. Don't expect to just do it one time and think like everything will work out. All right. So now let's look at the other route. So say, you attempt the breathing technique or, in the past, you've let those mistakes lead to future mistakes and then future disappointment. So say we lose our starting spot or even get cut because, we allowed that one mistake to kind of lower our confidence and then change our perspective of the soccer player that we are. So what do we do now? All right, obviously it's not the end of the world if you get cut or you lose your starting spot. Like it happens to a lot of people, but for the people who are truly committed and dedicated and want to get better at their sport and reach the highest level, they're not going to let that kind of tear them down and end their career. So I said, what do we do now? There's two options. Number one, you can give up, which is obviously what you don't want to do, because then you're just giving in to, that coach that thinks you're not good or whatever. Or the second one is use your emotions as motivation and kind of become that dedicated, that like obsessed player that wants to reach that next level. Um, and remember, like I was saying, we want to, as we go over these, we want to keep like the controllables versus uncontrollables in our head. So as frustrating as it may seem, a coach's decision is uncontrollable. Like I said, you can't control. You may have like the best game or the best tryout of your life, and then you get the email a couple days later that you didn't make it. I mean, that happened to me. I spoke about in the first meeting where I had like the best, tryout ever, the best like yeah, best tryout ever. And then the college coach was like, oh, you're not big enough or physical enough. So you never know what coaches are thinking, so you can't really control. Um, another example is, I know, there's favorites in soccer. So could be like a lot of politics involved. Maybe the coach knows like the kid who you're trying out was like a family friend. You never know what's going on. So there's so many things that you can't control. But like I put in bold at the bottom here, what we can control is our response to their decision and our mindset during this time. All right. So once you hear this news, you can become like, and it's all right. Like obviously, like I was saying before, you can acknowledge your emotions. It's okay to feel frustrated. It's okay. Um, to feel down on yourself for not making the team because that means like you really wanted it. But now, how to reverse that is to use that fuel and that anger, that frustration as motivation, go start training 2 times a day, start going to the gym, start going to the track like every day. Like doing those things will put you in a better mindset, and doing those things like practicing, getting in shape will actually build your confidence. Because as you're training more, and as you're getting bigger physically, when you step on the field, like you're gonna notice a difference because you're doing it every day. So, so like I said, when I do these webinars and everything I do with like mental performance, the big thing for me is when I was younger is like I would like tell people that I would like be anxious and nervous, and they would just be like, "Oh, it's okay, just like stop worrying about making mistakes." And I'm like, all right, yeah, like that sounds pretty easy, but then I'm like, how do I do that? Like, just because you're telling me to stop worrying about mistakes doesn't mean that I'm gonna like stop worrying. So I had like no resources or no like plan or preparation how to stop worrying about mistakes. Um, so these are just like I gave before, like the conscious breathing is a technique that I didn't find out until I was like almost in college. So I want to expose you guys or tell you guys about these techniques that you can use early on so that, when someone tells you like, or a coach tells you like, just stop worrying about mistakes, you're like, okay, like, oh, I have a resource that I can use to help me stop worrying about those mistakes. So these examples that I put, I split it up into the three pillars that I spoke about. So technically, like I was saying before, train extra hard, train 2 times more than everyone else. You should be going to the field, as much as you can. And the more you train, like I said, the more confidence you're going to get. Say you're working on a scissor, like what you do with Coach Mike and I, and you're not getting it, but then you go home and practice it 2 times a day for the next like 5, 6 days. Once you're in a game and you want to do that scissor, it's going to work out much better because your body's used to just getting around the ball, taking that second touch past your defender. Physically, the example I used is like following a nutrition plan so you can prepare your body to be at its best. I know when you're young, like 8, 9, 10, like you're not going to be going to the gym and like lifting weights. So physically doesn't necessarily mean like going to the gym and getting your body bigger. It could mean just preparing your body to perform at its best. So like eating healthy, not eating like super unhealthy foods before a game or the night before, physically preparing your body so that you can perform at your best and be the best player that you are. Mentally, one of the techniques that I just showed you, like the conscious breathing techniques. So in it, when you're in a game, you make that mistake, boom, you remember. Do the 3 seconds inhale, two hold, 3 seconds exhale. And that, like I said before, that should be able to relax your body, refocus on the present moment. And then one additional example I put there, which I actually did a lot when I was younger, was you could study the game. Like even if you're like home and maybe you already trained, like I used to like go on YouTube and look up like I was a center mid, so I would look up like the best midfielders of all time, like Busquets. I love Pirlo because I'm Italian. But like all like the greatest midfielders, I would like look up and like just see like the range of passes that they had, their movement off the ball. And then like even when I was like 6, 7 years old, I remember I would like watch like 90-minute games straight because I was so like interested in seeing like what players were doing. And like if you know that you're have a primary position maybe when you're a little bit older. So I always knew I was a center mid. Like I said, I would watch like a Premier League game and follow like a center mid the whole game, like see his movement when he has the ball, when he doesn't have the ball, when the other team has the ball. So like studying the game and watching it is a huge advantage that you can use to prepare you for when you're in that position in your own game. Uh, but I also wanted to include here a quick video because I know like saying it is a lot easy. It's not really like when I'm saying get over something, like maybe you need like concrete proof to believe it. But I'm sure all of you have heard of Michael Jordan, which is like one of the greatest basketball players of all time. And so the big story about him was he got cut from his varsity basketball team. I think it was his sophomore year. And so we'll look at the video here. It kind of like goes to show like how he reacted to that and how he used, like we were saying before, that fuel as like motivation. So I'll play that for you guys here.
The future is not just going to happen. You have to make it. Shopify Point of Sale makes it easy to start and grow your retail business. All backed by the world's most powerful commerce platform.
All right, could everyone see my screen here? I think you should be able to, so I'll play it here.
When Michael Jordan was only 15, he was like every other kid in the gym who dreamed of becoming the greatest basketball player. But his dream was crushed when he was cut from the high school basketball team because he wasn't tall enough. The team needed someone taller, so his close friend got in. And Michael's name was not on the list. He was embarrassed and devastated from this decision. So he went home, closed the door, and cried for hours. But as it turns out, that rejection gave Michael Jordan the motivation and willpower to become the best. That rejection launched his successful basketball career. I can accept failure. Everyone fails at something, but I can't accept not trying. He spent his sophomore year as the star of the junior varsity team, and at the end of that basketball season, Jordan wanted so much to watch the other boys play, so he asked the coach if he could ride the bus with the team to the tournament. The coach agreed, but under one condition. He told me that the only way I could go in was to carry the players' uniforms. So that's what I did. I walked into the building carrying the uniforms for the players who had made the team. What made me feel the worst about that was that my parents had come to watch the tournament, and when they saw me walking in carrying the uniforms, they thought I was being given a chance to play. That's what hurt me. They thought I was being given a chance, but I was just carrying the clothes for the others. But soon things started to change. The following summer, he grew 4 inches and trained harder than everyone else. Michael Jordan decided that nothing will stop him. He decided that failure and rejection won't discourage him and won't get in the way of his dream. Whenever I was working out and got tired and figured I ought to stop, I'd close my eyes and see that list in the locker room without my name on it. That usually got me going again. His hard work paid off. That year, he made the team and instantly became their best player. And as we know, Michael Jordan became one of the greatest basketball players of all time. He became a legend. His professional basketball career is really fascinating and one of a kind. It included 6 NBA championships, 14 All Star games, 2 Olympic gold medals.
All right, so that's just a little quick story on Michael Jordan, basically showing that he got cut from his varsity high school basketball team, which he could have got cut and been like, oh, I'm not good enough. Like I didn't even make my high school like varsity team. How am I supposed to like play in college, play professionally? But he use that anger, that motivation, or that fuel as motivation to get better. And one of the things I really liked about that video was the part when the person was saying how every time like he thought about like quitting or like stop training as hard, he would close his eyes and picture like the list that he saw or that the coach's list with his name not on it. And that would kind of remind him like why he was doing all this. Like he wanted to get on that list and like be the best player on that team, which obviously he became, and then had a legendary career as a player, probably one of the greatest basketball players of all time. So I think that's just like a perfect story of what we're explaining today. But Mike, if you wanted to chime in, like maybe on like any difficulty or setbacks you experienced on your career before you became a professional.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the big thing was there's always two ways to take disappointment. You can either let it affect you negatively, or you can use it as motivation, like fire to keep getting better. Obviously, what Coach Alex just showed with Michael Jordan is it was his fire, right? I've seen a lot of people not be able to take the disappointments correctly, and it's the downfall of their soccer careers, right? They can't get back from that. There's a lot of adversity in soccer too. Like it's not a straight line of just like success. You've got to go through so many different like valleys and humps. And even my career, like even when I was playing professionally, I would do something wrong, I would be outside the next day or even maybe that night practicing it nonstop until I couldn't get it wrong. I think the big thing is like, listen, it's okay if I make a mistake in terms of like, I turned the wrong way or I slipped. But if you're consistently making the same mistake of like your touch isn't good or you can't, or you're tripping over the ball when you're dribbling, those are things that you can correct yourself. Like you need to go home and practice more. I don't think there's enough there's there's not enough hours in a day that you could possibly practice. The more you practice, the better you can get. Those mistakes aren't going to be mistakes anymore because you're going to be so clean with everything you're doing from training it that you're not going to be making those anymore. You're just going to be easy making passes, completing your passes. I also think that like what Coach Alex wrote here too, two times more than everybody else in terms of like training extra hard. I think there's quality and quantity. I think training 2 to 3 times more than everyone else is great, is like the best thing you could possibly do, but also going to the field and understanding how to train. I feel like a lot of kids go to the field and they just mess around and just shoot on goal with their friends. That's not going to get you anywhere. That's going to make you end up where all those kids are ending up, and they're not going to go anywhere with soccer. When you go to the field, me and Coach Alex had to show you guys how to train by yourselves. You could show your friends how to do it. You can use the games we play. Go there and get something out of it. For me, I really learned how to train when I was in like eighth grade, ninth grade. Coach Steve is my brother. Luckily, he was a lot younger. So he was in fourth grade, fifth grade. So he was able to explode in terms of how good his technique goes and everything because he had that many years on me of understanding how to train correctly. In the beginning, we should go to the field and just shoot or just run. Like that's not understanding how to train. Going there with a plan and like just like if you were to go to a gym, nobody's gonna go to. You're usually not gonna go to a gym and just wing it. You go to there with a plan. Same thing when you go to the field and you go there with a plan of how you're gonna train and how to get better. Each day, each hour is another chance for you to get a little bit better than you were before. And you need to keep doing that. When there's disappointments hit, you need to push yourself to use those disappointments. Like I'm never gonna make that again. I'm never gonna make the mistake again. I'm gonna work on what I just did, what I just did wrong. So I think those are the big things to take away is how you respond to these like disappointments. There's negatively or positively. You can use them either way.
Yeah, I think definitely. And I feel like a lot of people don't understand that like even if you look at like professionals and you follow like their stories, because I've been doing that like a lot for since I did like the mental performance stuff and like studying that, like there's so many players that are in the Premier League, like on international teams that went through so much. Like for example, I know the story of like Richarlison where he like went to try out for like multiple teams, got cut from every single team, and like he only had enough money to like take his bus back to like his hometown, but instead of taking the bus home, he was like, you know what, like I'm not gonna let those coaches like dictate the person or player who I am. So he went to that last trial with the money he had. Fortunately got picked by that coach and then his career took off from there. Same thing with I know Jamie Vardy like didn't make his professional appearance until he was like 24, 25. So there's so many like disappointments that these players face, but the difference between making it versus not making it is here. Like, how do you respond to those challenges or those setbacks that you experience? Um, and I know a lot of in the first meeting, especially, a lot of people were kind of recommending like, maybe books or articles that I could give them to look at. And so actually I have a little movie recommendation and like I know it seems like maybe like kind of dumb or silly, but like I actually recently saw these two movies, like Inside Out 1 and Inside Out 2, which like explains it in like a perfect way. Because I feel like when you're reading like a book or you're reading like an article, they use like really like confusing like terms and words and stuff, and it gets kind of like mashed up into this whole like academic thing. Whereas like this movie, especially Inside Out 2, because I bolded that one, that's more about it's based I don't want to give the plot away, but it's about like this girl and they follow like her emotions as like a young child, which is the first one, which are the basics ones of like joy, anger, sadness, fear. But then like as she grows up, which is Inside Out 2, like she wants to be a really good hockey player. And then she starts getting like these other emotions like um, anxiety is like the biggest one, and it just like shows how her anxiety like took over her while she was playing hockey. So honestly, like if I had one recommendation right now, it would be this movie. I think it gives like a perfect depiction of how like our emotions can take over us, um and like they're present, but how we manage them and how we deal with them um will dictate how we perform and how we can reach like our fullest potential. So I would definitely recommend this movie. If you have to choose between, and maybe you don't want to watch both, I would say watch the second one, because that has to deal with more sports, like we were saying. But I didn't want to make it too long today because I know it's a little bit later today. We said like 8:30 to 9:30. But I know like maybe some people have school, work tomorrow. So that was the PowerPoint for today. We'll open the last like 15 minutes here to some questions. We'll be more than happy to answer any you have. It could be about anything, like the topic today, maybe topics from before, anything about like training, like physically, technically, mentally, anything. Feel free to ask. Yeah, feel free also, if you have no questions. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Like I said, I know it's a bit late. Maybe you have school the next day, but hopefully you learned something from this and can take this into your next game practice or whatever you have.
Yeah, I think it might be a smaller group. It's all right.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Take it easy, Adam.
You too.
All right, can you just send me that recording, Alex, so I can post it?
Yeah, no problem.
All right, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
See ya.